Okay, so good day, everyone. It's so great to have you here, and it's especially a very exciting day for me because we are having this conference, which we had hoped for how long, and we're having really great speakers, people that have distinguished themselves in their field, coming to speak to us today. So you're welcome, everyone who is here, and we would love to know where you're from. So please take a minute to just type in the chat box. Let's know where you're joining in from. As at the last count, we had people signed up from about 19 countries. Part of that was countries like Nigeria, definitely a whole bunch of people from Nigeria. We had people sign up from Kenya, thank you. So Ivana is joining in from Italy. We had people sign up from Zimbabwe, from Mauritius, from Australia, from the United Kingdom, the United States, and awesome. Yes, so Melissa's joining in from New Mexico, US. Escravos, okay. Where is that? Seattle, US. So thank you all for joining in, and we'll jump straight into the meeting in a short bit. But basically, we felt the need to do this because animal behavior is something that is so fundamental to us at this point. Animals are becoming more and more a part of our lives. We see that animals are playing different roles in our world and in our lives today. We have pet parents. We have animals joining in animal-assisted interventions. We have animals also serving as assistants or service animals to various segments of people. And so, and then especially during the COVID period, the lockdown period, we discovered that there was a high rise in pet ownership or pet guardianship across the world. So it meant that many more people were having animals in their homes and in their spaces. Oh yes, Lerato, thank you for joining me from Scotland as well. So we had animals coming into our homes, our spaces and all. And as we are having this, it's also important that we get to understand how animals function so that we can optimize or maximize our relationship with them. Because it's only when we know how they function that we can have a better relationship, or do I say an optimal relationship. So thank you very much for joining in and for your interest in learning about animal behavior. At this point, I'll hand over to one of my mentors who is in the meeting with us, Melissa Winkle, to make some short remarks.
Good morning. Welcome everybody to this workshop. You are in for quite a session full of the latest information in animal behavior. Considerations in animal behavior are going to make a big difference in all of your relationships with animals, whether it's pets, animal-assisted interventions, working dogs, and more. We now know that we need to understand cognition, behavior, and emotions to have better relationships with our animals, whether it's working or companion. So settle in and make sure that you take a lot of notes. You're in for a great surprise.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, Melissa. So the first person who will be speaking to us today is someone who I met on an event like this, and she spoke that day about animal behavior, and I was spellbound by her presentation and everything else that she said. And today, we are so blessed and lucky to have her here join us today as one of the speakers or presenters at this event. And she's someone who has a master's in anthrozoology from Canisius College in Buffalo, New York. She has a certificate in applied animal behavior from the University of Washington in Seattle. She's a certified professional dog trainer. So she has CPDT KA certification. And she graduated with honors with a certificate in training and counseling from the Academy for Dog Trainers. She's also a Fear-Free certified animal trainer, and she's currently pursuing her Doctor of Education in Educational and Professional Practice with a specialization in Humane Education from Antioch University. As a passionate advocate for animal welfare, she co-founded the Humane Alliance of Rescue Trainers, a nonprofit that matches shelter and rescue organizations with behavior support at no cost. Additionally, through her business, Coexistence Consulting, she offers online consulting and humane education for guardians, professionals, and organizations. Please make welcome our first speaker for today, Emily Tronetti.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So hopefully you're seeing my presentation slides now. If you're having any issues seeing those slides, please let me know. If you're having any issues hearing me or anything like that, definitely let us know in the chat. So I am so honored to be here talking to everyone. And I just thank you, Dr. Sunday, so much. And I'm so grateful for you for asking me to do this. This is just honestly a dream come true to be able to be speaking to such an international audience. So thank you. So yeah, we're going to be talking about pathways to studying animal behavior today. Let's see if I can get my slides going. Okay, so I am going to try something a little bit different today. So I would love for you to be able to access the links that I'll be sharing that will be embedded in my presentation. And you can also follow along kind of at your own pace with these slides if you go to my website, which is www.coexistence.consulting/slides. You'll see a little picture with today's presentation, and you can click that and then type in the password pathways. And so that'll give you the PDF of this presentation so that you can, again, follow along. And for any slides that have links embedded, you'll be able to click those. And then hopefully you can kind of have those resources moving forward, because we're going to be talking a lot about, different ways to learn more about animal behavior. So hopefully that works for everyone. This is the first time I'm doing this in a presentation, so definitely I'd love your feedback on if it's working and if this was helpful. Okay, so Dr. Sunday gave such a lovely intro for me. Thank you. So I'm not going to go over this, but the main takeaway from this slide is that I am so passionate about animal behavior and animal welfare, and as we kind of move through looking at the different ways that we can study or that we can continue our education in animal behavior, I've taken a few different programs, and I'm happy to answer questions, whether it's today about the programs that I have experience with, or you can always get in contact with me after today if you have questions about any of the programs, if you're interested in continuing your education. So we're going to look a little bit more deeply into, what is animal behavior? Why is it important? We're going to look at different types of animal behavior professionals, and then we will also be talking about how you can learn more about animal behavior beyond today. Okay, so what is animal behavior, and what does it mean to understand it? Animal behavior is how an animal interacts with their physical, ecological, and social environment. So in general, behaviors are the observable responses to external and internal stimuli. So for example, we see a larger cat booping a smaller cat on the head in this photo. And the smaller cat is, one of the external stimuli that is eliciting the behavior of the larger cat. But there might also be internal stimuli contributing to the larger cat's behavior. So there could be emotional states like playfulness or frustration. And there could also be, physiological states such as fatigue, or maybe the cat's just not feeling well. It's hard to say exactly what this cat is feeling just based on the photo, but I guess the takeaway here is, there's so many different things that can be contributing to the behavior that we're seeing. There's things that could be happening in the environment. Sometimes the more obvious things, like, another animal, but sometimes there could be things happening in the environment that we're not even aware of, especially given that, non-human animals often have or experience the world through their senses in different ways than we humans do. And so it's important to remain engaged with the environment and understand all of the different things that could be impacting animal behavior. And then it's also really important to consider the internal environment. So how is that animal feeling emotionally and physiologically? There's so many different factors that can contribute to animal behavior. And so in the professional field of animal behavior, we focus first on objectively observing behavior before making interpretations about that animal's mental state. And this is really important. Research and anecdotal evidence tells us that humans often struggle with identifying and interpreting animal behavior. In fact, we often misinterpret behaviors, and we might label dogs like this one in this photo. Here we have this dog who's kind of sitting back. He's kind of leaning away, shifting his weight away from the human. We're seeing some panting, we're seeing some ears back, and maybe looks like a little bit of a furrowed brow. And this is all kind of the animal shifting their body weight away, even though the person is, looks like there's some tension on that leash. So it's probably a little bit uncomfortable for the dog. And so when we look at this, when we see this dog's behavior, if we're making kind of a gut reaction, we might say, oh, this dog's being so stubborn, he just won't come with me. But when we do pause and actually observe all of those different things that, all of those different pieces of the picture, it might shift our perspective in terms of, what are we seeing? Is this dog just being stubborn? And the reason why I think this is so important is because when we do, kind of quickly come to a conclusion, or when we label behavior, especially when those labels are misinterpretations, all of this impacts our behavior towards other animals. They impact, these labels impact how we care for other animals. And so when we pause to consider, how does our behavior change towards our companion animals when we observe, instead of being stubborn, maybe this animal is actually afraid. And so I think that is something that we really have to kind of slow down when we are in the presence of other animals. And instead of jumping to conclusions about, what they're doing and why, take moments to pause and observe what's actually happening in the environment. What behaviors are we seeing? What body language are we seeing? And I think that it might help us shift our perspective a bit about animal behavior. And so, there's so many things that we need to think about in terms of animal behavior and body language. Before we jump to conclusions about what they're feeling or what the animal's intentions are. And so as we're making observations, I just wanted to share with you a few things to keep in mind. So we have to consider, what is the animal's species as well as their breed. These can certainly influence how animals communicate and their behavior. We also have to consider genetics. I know that we had quite a few questions that people had submitted beforehand, asking about the role of genetics in animal behavior. And genetics can definitely influence animal behavior. But we must also look at the whole body. So, I think it can be easy to kind of hone in on just one aspect of the animal. I know that like a lot of us were taught, oftentimes from a young age, like a dog's tail holds all of the answers. If the tail is wagging, the dog is happy. If the tail is tucked between their legs, then they're scared. But tails are so much more complex. There's an entire body attached to that tail that is also displaying important communicative signals. And so we can't just look at the tail. We have to also look at the ears, the eyes, the muzzle, the position of their head, the position of their body. Are we seeing muscle tension? So many different things to look at. And we also need to take into account the context, kind of like I was talking about earlier with like thinking about what's happening in the environment. And also, what is the specific situation? So, a growl, for example, can mean different things depending on the context. So a growl during play is different or can be different than when a dog growls when someone is approaching their favorite bone, or if someone touches a painful area. So we have to also ask ourselves, again, what's happening in the environment that might be influencing their behavior and body language. Finally, it is crucial to consider the individual animal. And I think this is important because just like humans, other animals, have individual quirks. And so we need to be cautious about making sweeping generalizations about animals. I think we often do that when it comes to like breed. I'm sure we all have these stereotypes in mind when it comes to different breeds or even different species, right? We often have kind of we talk about the stereotypical cat and the stereotypical dog. And while of course, part of why we have these stereotypes with certain dog breeds, for example, is because they were bred to be a certain way. But we also, have to be, we can't kind of let our own biases about other animals, our own stereotypes about them, prevent us from actually seeing that animal, that individual animal for who they are. We have to make sure we are taking the time to getting to know the animal that we are observing, that we are working with. We have to, pause and learn, what are the contexts that make this animal feel fearful? What are the contexts that this animal is most relaxed in? We have to get a sense for what their baseline is, and that's going to be different for every animal. And also, just like humans, what a non-human animal is comfortable with will vary from day to day, even minute to minute sometimes. And this depends on, those factors that we talked about earlier, what's happening in the environment, both internally and externally. So if the animal isn't feeling well, or if they're hungry, or if they're really tired, what they are most comfortable with or what they're willing to tolerate can change. And so this is why it's so important to always monitor body language and behavior, no matter how well we know an animal. So these infographics give a really excellent overview of the most common behaviors that dogs and cats use to communicate various emotional states. So knowing to look out for these various signs is essential to anyone caring for other animals. And of course, we don't have time to go through these graphics in detail, but essentially what we want to see are our behaviors that fall in like the green section. We want companion animals. We want all animals to be feeling relaxed. And maybe a little bit. We want them to be interested in what's happening in their environment. But we don't want them anxious or fearful about what's happening in their environment. So for the behaviors that we see that are falling in like the yellow and red sections of these graphics, these are behaviors that are often correlated with fear, anxiety, and distress. And these behaviors mean that changes are necessary if we are to improve that animal's welfare and ensure the emotional and physical safety of all involved. So if you'd like to look at this graphic more closely, you can access them by clicking the slide if you're following along on my website, or you can go to the website at the bottom of the slide, which is Fear Free Happy Homes. And these graphics are available for free on that website. And they also have 2 really wonderful videos that kind of go along with these graphics on cat and dog body language, so you can see this information in action. So another important aspect of understanding animal behavior is understanding how they learn. And this topic alone could be an entire conference. And so I'm not going to go through this in detail, but the most important thing to know is that, in the animal behavior field, we tend to focus on operant conditioning and classical conditioning. So these are two of the primary ways that animals learn that we focus on in the animal behavior field. So operant conditioning is when an animal learns from the consequences that immediately follow their behavior. And classical conditioning is when animals learn associations between what's happening in their environment. So they learn whether different environmental stimuli predict good things or bad things. They're through classical conditioning, they're learning whether different stimuli or different things happening in their environment are safe or unsafe. And so I'm not going to be quizzing you on these, so you don't have to memorize them or anything, but just to kind of give you some insight into what are the frameworks or what are the theories that kind of that we see in the animal behavior field. And also when we think about how animals learn, it can then give us some awareness of how our interactions with them are being influenced, what they're learning about us humans, and so I think that we have to be aware that animals are learning all of the time. We often talk about operant conditioning and classical conditioning as these two different ways of learning. They're often occurring, at the same time. Just like us humans, right? Like right now, of course, right now, hopefully you're learning, but, even when there's seemingly really nothing happening, if you're just hanging out at home, there's things you're likely learning, you're learning things about your environment. Same thing with our animals. They're always learning. So like if you're sitting on the couch right now and you're petting your dog, your dog, and if your dog is comfortable and loving that, your dog is learning that this is a safe space, this context, this environment, my person, this is safe. And so we have to be aware that they're always learning, even when we're not officially training them. So when an animal is interacting with a human, they're learning something. And so the questions we have to ask are, what is it do we want them to learn? What do we want this animal to associate with our presence? Are they associating us humans with safety or discomfort? And I believe, of course, that we should always strive for our interactions with other animals. We should strive for interactions that build trust rather than break it down, because trust is essential to the bonds that humans share with other animals. And I know that's something that, we're all very passionate about, that this bond is why we're here. And we have seen the positive impacts that it can have on both human and non-human health and well-being. And we ourselves, I'm sure, have all shared important bonds with other species. There's this great article by veterinary behaviorist Daniel Mills and a cognitive neuroscientist whose name is Sophie Hall. And they describe these bonds as an emotional bond that supports a sense of closeness, well-being, and security. So how can we help our animals feel more secure? How can we help them feel safe? I think by asking these questions, we can not only improve animal behavior, but we can also, deepen the bonds that we share with them. And so to preserve and deepen these bonds, we must critically reflect on how our own behavior influences these important relationships. For example, we continue to see more and more studies on how different training methods and tools can impact animal welfare and the bonds that we share with them. And we're finding that that using tools that cause fear, pain, or discomfort to change behavior can quickly erode their trust in us and damage these bonds that we share with them, which is the opposite of what we want, right? And so it's really important to be aware of how we train and interact with our animals might be influencing our relationships with them. And so this is why it is so important to be careful about who we trust when it comes to animal behavior advice, whether that's, reading something about animal behavior on the internet, or actually working with an animal behavior professional, or if you are interested in learning more about animal behavior, who do you go to? What kind of school do you attend? We have to be very careful about, who we take advice from. And that's simply because, it's not because some people are bad and some people are good. And, it's for me, at least, I think I've learned that it's more about just access to education, access to the science, that's being done on animal behavior and training. I think I like to believe that we're all just doing the best that we can with the knowledge and tools that we have. But I also think it's really important to recognize that the professional fields of animal training and behavior are unregulated in most countries. And this means that anyone can call themselves a trainer, a behavior consultant, or behaviorist. And so they're not required to have specific credentials or to meet specific standards. And so because of this, because there aren't standards, because anyone can call themselves a trainer or a behaviorist, because really anyone can put anything on the internet about behavior. Misinformation about animal behavior is pervasive. And so this results in the use of, harmful methods to train and care for other animals. And so I think it's important to learn about who is a trustworthy source for animal behavior information. So who is committed and has access to the most up-to-date information regarding animal behavior and welfare, and to know what the differences are between different animal behavior professionals. So first, let's take a quick look at veterinary behaviorists. I'm just going to go through this quickly because I know Dr. Carlo is going to be going through this more deeply. But veterinary behaviorists are veterinarians who are board certified in behavior. And they not only have a deep understanding of behavior, but they also have obviously a deep understanding, a thorough knowledge of the medical issues that can impact behavior. And, I think sometimes we get stuck in this dichotomy of behavior versus medical, but they're so interconnected. So often, behavior issues are tied to medical issues. And so we really need to have a veterinarian on the team. And also, because veterinary behaviorists are veterinarians, they can diagnose psychiatric and medical conditions, they can prescribe medications or supplements or special diets. And no other animal behavior professional should be doing this. If we're talking about things to look out for, red flags, if an animal behavior professional is telling you to switch your animal's diet or to try this supplement, if they are not a veterinarian, that is a red flag. We need to be working within our scopes of practice. Now, of course, for me, as a behavior consultant, I can always say, I recommend you talk to your veterinarian about medication and just leave it at that. But I should not be, going deeply into conversations about, diet and supplements and things like that. That is outside of my scope of practice as a behavior consultant. And so we have to be aware of, what is the person's qualifications? What advice are they giving me? And veterinary behaviorists are just so valuable to have on our team, especially for animals who are struggling with fear, anxiety, and stress, or other behavior issues. A veterinary behaviorist can play a really important role in giving them the best care possible as quickly as possible. And so there are also animal behaviorists who might not be veterinarians. And, again, legally, anyone can call themselves a behaviorist. So it's really important to ask, what their qualifications are if they do claim to be a behaviorist. And, among, kind of reputable behavior professionals, there's this understanding that the title behaviorist is generally reserved for people with at least a graduate degree in behavior. So this is why I don't call myself a behaviorist. I do have a graduate degree, but my degree is in anthrozoology, which is the study of the relationships between humans and other animals. But my degree isn't in animal behavior. So I don't call myself a behaviorist. And so there are some organizations like the Animal Behavior Society that has a certification process for applied animal behaviorists. And again, you have to have graduate degrees in animal behavior. I'm not going to go through this in much detail just for the sake of time. But you can always check out the Animal Behavior Society website if you're interested in learning more about, what degrees you need to have to qualify as a certified applied animal behaviorist. And we also have trainers and behavior consultants. As I mentioned earlier, anyone can call themselves a trainer or behavior consultant, and the benefits of working with one of these professionals can vary greatly depending on who you're working with, and the behavior issue that needs addressed. And so in most countries, again, you don't need credentials to provide training and behavior consulting services, but there are many credentials available. These are just a few of the credentialing organizations and programs that I'm most familiar with and that I trust. And again, we won't go through all of these for the sake of time, but if you, when you access the PDF of these slides, you'll be able to click each of the underlined words so that you can go to their website and learn more about their certifications or credentials and can kind of explore kind of on your own. But, as you can see, there's so many different types of animal behavior professionals, as well as various credentials available to those who are interested in becoming a behavior professional. But, what if you're completely new to this field and maybe you are an animal professional, such as a veterinarian who wants to learn more about animal behavior? So where do you start? I'm just going to quickly share a few places you can start if you're new to this field. So, obviously, of course, the first is exploring reputable websites that have information about animal behavior. I really love fearfreehappyhomes.com because all of their content has been approved by veterinary behaviorists. So it's a really great resource. And again, all of these links you can access on the clickable PDF, which I can share again at the end of the presentation. And then I also think it's really valuable to hire an animal behavior professional to learn what this work is like from the client's perspective. I think it's a great way to also build a trusting relationship with a behavior professional who can maybe serve as a resource as you kind of embark on your own animal behavior journey. And then to find a reputable animal behavior professional, one place to start is that credentials slide that I shared earlier. Many of those organizations have directories on their websites with professionals that hold their credentials. So you can search their website and find those professionals who hold their certifications. Another option is asking professionals that you trust who are already, in your community, who, advocate for fear-free or force-free or positive reinforcement-based training and handling. But no matter how you come across a professional, I always recommend that you still vet them. So you still ask them questions, you still, make sure that they are using methods that you're comfortable with, that they're also just the right fit for you and your animal. And then attending conferences and online presentations, webinars, workshops. There's so many options now, both that are available both in person and online. I love that there's so many things available online now. And here are just a few examples on this slide. Clicker Expo is a wonderful conference. And then we have like the Lemonade Conference by the International Associate for Animal Behavior Professionals. Lots of really great options in terms of conferences that you can learn so much information from. And then we also have a few animal training specific programs. So if you are interested in becoming an animal trainer, the Academy for Dog Trainers and the Karen Pryor Academy are really wonderful programs. And I also, if you're interested in cat behavior, the International Cat Care Organization has some courses on their website, including a course for veterinary professionals on advanced feline behavior. So that's actually next on my list because they have one for like non-veterinary professionals as well. And I'm just like so excited. I really want to take this feline behavior course that they have. And so lots of different options for animal training courses, but again, please make sure that you are doing your due diligence and making sure that they are using methods that are up to date with the most recent research, because there's a lot of schools out there that are not. So making sure that, you're attending or, paying lots of money for a reputable school. And again, I'm always happy to answer questions about programs like this. And then finally, we have degrees in animal behavior. There's a lot of in-person degree programs, but there's only a handful that are online that at least I'm aware of and that I trust. We have there's a master's in clinical animal behavior from University of Edinburgh. There's a master's in applied animal behavior and welfare from Virginia Tech. And then I know Dr. Carlo is going to be talking a little bit to us about the online master's program. They also have a graduate certificate through the university that he works for, UPenn. So some really awesome options. I know people who have attended both the Edinburgh and the Virginia Tech programs. So always happy to connect you with my colleagues who've been in those programs if you're interested. And then finally, if you're interested in learning more about Fear Free, which I know I haven't really talked too much about, but it's a really amazing program that they have different courses for everyone from vet professionals to animal trainers to pet sitters to groomers. And it's all about teaching you kind of the basics of animal behavior, body language, and how to handle them in a way that minimizes fear, anxiety, and stress as much as possible. And if you're interested in signing up for their courses, I have the discount code, just because, any little bit helps. And, you'll have access to this in the slides that I'll share with you at the end. So no worries if you're trying to jot this down quickly. And so here are my references. Again, you'll have access to these. Lots of great articles here that you can look at, a few books as well. And then, so if you want to look at the slides, have access to these slides, again, go to coexistence.consulting/slides. The password is pathways. And also while you're there at my website, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me through my website. Like if you'd like to connect with me personally, and then we'll also be answering questions at the end here. Definitely join my mailing list and follow me on social media so we can stay connected. And that's it. Thank you for watching, and I'm just so grateful for you, Sunday, for having me.
Thank you so much, Emily, for your presentation, and thank you for all the resources that you've given us. I especially love the fact that you gave us websites to work with and resources that people who are interested could go sign up to and all of that. So thank you so very much for your amazing presentation and everything. I would love to just state at this point that for anyone who has a question, and first of all, thank you all for all the questions that for the attendees, for all the questions you dropped in while you were registering. We've had all those packed up already, and we'll get to share them with the speakers and get answers to them. But if you also do have any question that comes up right now, maybe from what the presenters are saying and all of that, or any other thing that you think about, please don't hesitate to use the Q&A tab below to get to write the question, and then we'll get to have them directed to the speakers after the speeches, and then you'll get answers to the questions. Also to say that for all those who are currently registered with the CCPDT, that's the Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers, please, if we've had to put in already for continuing education units for you, so please let us know, and then we'll let us have your names after this, and then we'll get to forward the names to them once we get approval for you to have CEU units from attending this event. At this point, we'll move to the second presentation, and our second presenter for today is someone who I met in 2019. He was gracious enough to give me the opportunity to shadow him, which meant that I got the opportunity to visit his organization, University of Pennsylvania, and I got to experience what a day in the life was for them. And that's because I was very interested as well in the credential that he carries. So I would read his bio at this point. So he obtained his DVM from the University of Messina in Italy, and his PhD from the Autonomous University of Barcelona, Spain, defending a thesis on perioperative stress in dogs and the effect of pheromone therapy. He completed his residency in animal behavior at the School of Veterinary Medicine of the University of Pennsylvania, where he is currently an associate professor of clinical animal behavior and welfare. And he's also the director of the Animal Behavior Service. He's board certified by the American College of Veterinary Behaviorists, of which he is the current president. And he's also board certified by the European College of Animal Welfare and Behavior Medicine. His research interests are focused on canine stress evaluation and control, canine and feline temperament evaluation, prognostic factors, and treatment outcome of behavior problems, behavior and cognitive changes in dogs with medical disease. Please make welcome our second presenter for the day, Dr. Carlo Siracusa.
Thank you, Dr. Sunday. Well,
please, so we can wave our hands to just give a round of applause.
Well, all these things that I do, it basically means that my presentation is going to be very boring compared to Emily's presentation, which was so rich of images and very, very visually enriching. Mine is just plain black and white, as an academician, a boring academician would do. So I'll go and share my screen and get started. I will optimize for video and sound. There you go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So as Dr. Sander was saying, I work at the University of Pennsylvania, where I'm a clinical professor. What this means is that my main duty is clinics and teaching, but I also do some research. And I say in this presentation that I'm a dog shrink. It's not a term that I use a lot, but just to make understand that our medical specialization is the equivalent of psychiatry in human medicine. So what are we going to do in the next half an hour? I'm going before to sort of zoom out a little bit and see how behavior medicine and welfare they relate to medicine in general, to veterinary medicine in general, but also to the One Health movement that I'm sure you heard about. But then we are going to zoom in again, and we will focus on how to become a board-certified veterinary behaviorist, and then we will see what you can do with this degree. Again, you are probably all familiar with this concept of One Health, right? It used to be called One Medicine, and this movement that recognize how everything is connected, everything that lives on planet Earth and planet Earth are connected, right? So things that we do in one species, they are going to definitely have an impact on other species. And things that we do to our planet, they are going to have an impact on all the species that live in the planet. Veterinarians, they have a growing role and recognition in this movement. And veterinary behaviorists specifically, they do their part too. And for veterinary behaviorists, I will also include people that are specializing in animal welfare, which let's say taking a shortcut, we can say that this sort of behavior for large animal. It's not exactly this, but people that are usually interested in behavior of large animals, farm animals, especially production animal, they do get board certified. I have a short video, which is a video produced by the World Health Organization that explain in very simple words what One Health is. I like it a lot. The World Health Organization, there is a veterinary branch that's called OIE.
Meet Musa. Musa is a veterinarian. With other animal health professionals, he helps fight animal diseases and improve animal welfare. You know that. But did you know that, in doing so, Musa also helps keep you and your family healthy? The far-reaching impacts of Musa's work should not come as a surprise. In our globalized world, we are all interdependent. Animal diseases can affect the health of people, and human diseases can affect the health of animals. For example, when humans cut down trees, they affect the balance of the ecosystem and of all the creatures living in it. Usual ecosystem services such as food provision or carbon capture can become a challenge. Wild animals are sometimes forced to flee their natural habitats to find sources of food getting closer to villages. Animals and humans that should never have interacted so closely suddenly do. And dangerous pathogens can jump from one species to the next. Sound familiar? Around 5 new human diseases appear every year. 3 of them are of animal origin, as for example Ebola and most probably COVID-19. 60% of existing human infectious diseases come from animals. Deforestation is just one example. Unregulated wildlife trade, climate change, all affect environmental health, and with it, animals and humans. Musa and his colleagues are at the forefront of the fight against diseases that can affect the health of all. To create a healthier world, they need to work in collaboration with other sectors. The World Organization for Animal Health helps them come together with other experts to share essential knowledge, to build a global network, and to design a common response to global threats. Because we all share one world, we all share one health.
Okay, so this video explains very well what One Health is, and you can see the role that, for example, someone that is specializing in behavior or welfare has. As the video explains, like a lot of transmission of diseases, zoonosis that come from animals, they are due to the behavior of animals that come closer to humans. And so understanding how our environment influences the behavior of the species that live with us, including dogs and cats. Think that, for example, COVID-19 is transmissible to dogs and cats. There are no documented cases of the opposite jump, like from dogs and cats to people, but understanding the social behavior of a species, it's very important to understand the way in which this species can influence our health too. And we will see some more examples that are closely related to small animal behaviors. For example, dog aggression, right, which is also a public health problem. Again, I'm taking this with a very large approach, thinking also to wildlife, because here in Pennsylvania, for example, deers have been found to be a host of COVID-19, and virtually all the population of deers in Pennsylvania is COVID positive. So what is going to happen if we modify our environment in a way that we come too close to the species, right? Okay, so let's again zoom in and let's talk about veterinarians before and then veterinary behaviorists. So the classical veterinarians that you know is the clinical practitioners, is the veterinarian where you bring your pet if you have one. However, I think that being someone that believe a lot in public health, in the role that veterinarians they have in public health, I think the general practitioners are our army of people that is sent there to really detect problems and to do a lot of preventative medicine. So I have a huge respect for general practitioners. A smaller percentage of veterinarians, then they decide to specialize in something. And this is usually, it takes 3 to 4 years to 5 years, it depends on the specialty. And they are focused on one specific topic, a little bit like it happens in human medicine, right? And animal behavior is one of these specialization. And animal welfare is another one. Many other veterinarians, they actually devote their life to research. A lot of discoveries that that allow to create things that you enjoy in your daily life, they come from veterinarians. And I will give you an example, a person that now is very, very famous, who is a veterinarian. And a lot of things that then are applied to humans, they are first discovered in animals. And I find very curious that many people actually, they have the problems to do the opposite process, thinking that if something's true for humans and it's been studied in animals, so probably it's true for animals too. A lot of my clients, when I explain them how the brain works and why their pet is doing like this, they're like, oh, like in people. Yeah, it happens that these things was actually studied before in animals, in lab animals, right? And other veterinarians, they go to work for government agencies, or they can consult with private industry. You'll be surprised. Every time you work with industry, they tell you to not say anything, to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So I cannot say a lot, but you will be surprised how many industries that you will never imagine that they will need a veterinary behaviorist. They do. Even companies that you deal probably on an everyday basis on the internet, right? So once you get your degree, then you can physically work in private practices, both general practices or specialty practices. You can work in academia like I do, or for a research laboratory. But again, there is a huge demand of veterinarians and also veterinary behaviorists in government and private industry that is not primarily related to veterinary medicine or behavior. The famous person that I was telling you is Albert Bourla, who is the CEO of Pfizer, the manufacturer of the COVID vaccine, which he became very, very famous because of the role that he's having in the COVID-19 treatment. And he's a veterinarian, that graduated in Europe in a public school, like public education. Even though I work now in a completely different system, is very, very solid. That can give you a great career. Another person that became very famous is Dr. Ilaria Capua, that used to work in Italy. Now she works in the United States. Was the first one that shared, for example, publicly the genome sequence of a virus, right? So I love my profession, so I tend to brag a lot about my profession. So in order to be a board certified veterinary behaviorist, before you have to be a veterinarian, and this is something that I always remind people, it's a long career, and before getting to do what you like or love, you need to do many other things that you might not necessarily be a big fan of, right? So you have to go to college to study veterinary medicine if you are based in the US, or if you study in the US. This is even more difficult because in the US, veterinary school is a graduate program, so it happens actually after you do your college. So you usually have 4 years of college, 4 years of veterinary school, 1 year of internship, 3 years of specialty. So see how long this story is, right? I graduated in Europe at the University of Messina in Italy, so it was a little bit shorter for me. The school is 1 year longer, but then I could directly go to a PhD program and then to a residency. I took a weird path, which is I completed my veterinary degree. I did an internship at the University of Barcelona, which it depends if you consider the University of Messina that was paying for this was an externship, and then I did a PhD, and then I did my residency. And in the meantime, I also did a master, 2 masters, one in applied animal ethology, one in animal ethology. You don't have to do all this stuff. To be a board certified veterinary behaviorist, you can finish your vet school, then have the equivalent of 1 year of practice that has to be equivalent to a rotating internship. What does this mean? It means that you needed to have contact with different services. So you needed to do your share of surgeries, your share of internal medicine, neurology. So it has to be equivalent to what happens in a hospital in which there are many specialties. Personally, for my residents, for example, I like when they have 1 year of rotating internship or 2 or 3 years of general practice. Who does tell you that you are ready to be a board certified veterinary behaviorist? This is like a club, a membership, right? In which you have to be admitted. So people that are already board certified, they tell you that you can be board certified. There are several bodies. The 2 biggest one are the American College of Veterinary Behaviorists and the European College of Animal Welfare and Behavior Medicine. So as you can see from this slide, in the United States, behavior is a different, like the behavior college is different from the welfare college. They are 2 separate entities. Actually, the welfare college is much more recent than the behavior college. Before, if you wanted to do large animal welfare, you most likely were board certified in behavior, and then you worked with large animals. But now there is a different path, which is the animal welfare college. But both in Europe and Latin America, it's the same college, and then you have a different track. If you want to specialize in small animal behaviors versus large animal welfare, or animal welfare in general, because there's a lot of animal welfare with small animals. The Australian and New Zealand College is a generic college for veterinary scientists, for veterinarians, and then there are different chapters. They also have a behavior chapter. There might be other certifying associations, but I think these are the biggest one. I might be wrong. If someone has this information, let me know. And I know very well the American College of Veterinary Behavior, which I represent. I'm honored to represent right now. And I can tell you what you do when you are a resident with our college. I'm also involved in the preliminary exam committee for the European College of Veterinary Behavior. It's very similar path with some differences. First of all, there are 2 types of programs. one that is what is called a traditional program and a non-traditional program. A traditional program has this name because they were the first programs. So they were university-based program in which the university had a standard program, which is usually 3 years, and they tell to the college people that will come here to do the program, they will do this. They will see a minimum of this case. They will work 70% at least in the clinics. They will do a research project. They will attend this course, this other course. So everything is very standardized. However, there is another way. Now they're called non-traditional programs, which are programs that are approved on an individual basis, right? You as a candidate, you say, you contact a person that might be your mentor, that has to be a board certified veterinary behaviorist. And with your mentor, you design a program. You say, I'm going to do these things. Mostly is the number of cases that you see, that is said to be more than 400, that your mentor will supervise you very strictly in the first 75. And what type of research project, what courses you are going to attend. They have to be graduate level courses. So they usually are university courses. And this can be longer than 3 years. It usually is longer than 3 years. Now the situation is changing because there are traditional programs that are actually based in private practices too. This residency would be just a piece of what you have to do, the bigger piece, but it's just a piece because to be credentialed, that is to be approved to take the examination, you need other things. You have to complete your residency, but also you have to publish a paper, first author. It means it has to be your own research, right? You have to complete a research project and publish it. And in the American college, you have to write case reports. That is, you have to present written reports of 3 cases that you have seen, and like if you are going to publish them in a journal. The European College does not have this part, but the European College has an oral examination that the American College does not have. Once you get credentialed in the American College, you take a written examination, which is 2 days or 3 days. I don't remember now. I think it's 2 full days. So what are the skills that you need to become a veterinary behaviorist, a board certified veterinary behaviorist? First of all, remember, is a medicine program. So you have to know the medicine and the science. There is this belief, oh, you're so lucky you work with puppies and kittens all day. Forget about all this stuff. Oh, I love animals. All my students know my motto, love is overrated in veterinary medicine. It's not about loving animals. It's knowing the medicine, knowing the science, and being empathetic. What is empathy, right? Empathy is understanding the reality from the animal point of view. So you need to be able to see the reality, how an animal perceives the reality. You might not need to love. If you love this species, this animal, that's good for you. You will enjoy your profession. But what our patients expect from us, well, they don't expect anything because they are animals. They don't understand what veterinarians do. But if what we owe them is empathy, is understanding what makes them have a good quality of life. Welfare, remember, welfare is the quality of life as it is perceived by the animal itself, right? So this is what we have to do. We don't have to love animals. And for doing this, we need to know the medicine and the science behind it. So becoming a board certified veterinary behaviorist is very heavy on medicine and science. You have to know all the medicine, including surgery, at least the principles, right? You don't have to do a complete surgery, but you need to understand how pain might influence behavior, because when we get sick, we are grumpy, we are upset, and so are our animals. Then another thing that I see people underestimate sometimes. Say, oh, I really love animals, so this is why I want to be into animal behavior. I don't like people. Well, that's not, animal behavior is not your profession. Because to implement a behavior treatment or to implement a welfare plan, you need to communicate to people. And your communication with people is very heavy. You really, really, really need to talk a lot with your clients that will email or call you, sometimes every day. So you can't be upset or you have to explain the same thing over and over again. And it's your job to explain it in a way that the client understands, right? So you really need to have excellent communication skills. And now also you have to be patient. It's a lot for at every step of this process. You have to be patient to become a board certified virtual behaviorist because it's a long way, and you will not make money before, especially if you go into a traditional program or university program before you become board certified veterinary behaviorist. But also when you are then a veterinary behaviorist, you have to be patient because behavioral disease is chronic disease. Mental illness is chronic disease, most of it. So it's a process that you have to follow with your patients and clients for a long, long, long time, right? So how did I take all this information and what I did with myself? I already said a little bit of this. I'm a veterinarian. I also took the long path. You don't have to. I did a PhD. Then I specialized and now my job is mostly clinical teaching, a lot of teaching lately, and research. But I'm getting a lot of requests for consultation with private industry. I was very surprised at the beginning. I can't take most of it because I have another job, so I cannot do it. But you will be surprised how many requests for consultation, how much job there is out there. I'll show this video, at least sequence of it, because I don't want to run out.
It was just screeching. I mean, there was a lot of blood.
A dog attacks a young girl at Balboa Park, leaving her with scars on her face. The mother can't believe what happened next. The policy, she says, put lives in danger. The mother of a young girl bitten in a gruesome dog attack at Balboa Park is calling for changes after the dog was allowed to go home after the incident. New at 6, 10 News reporter Michael Chen looks at the response she got from animal control when she demanded that dog be taken in.
It was a picture-perfect day for a family picture here at Balboa Park until the day turned into a nightmare for the family of a little girl.
She was down here.
Courtney Schwalbe says her 3-year-old daughter Kennedy and her sister were looking at the fish that October day. A photographer snapping candid photos when this happened.
I heard the scream and I just knew that it was my child.
Schwalbe, retrieving something from the stroller, ran to her daughter.
It was horrible. There was blood everywhere.
Witnesses say a tan chihuahua about the size of this one ran up to Kennedy and bit her in the face, biting off part of her lip. She was rushed to a hospital where a plastic surgeon sewed up her wounds. The next day, she found out the dog had been sent home with its owner in Chula Vista. It wasn't until 2 days after the attack that Chula Vista's animal care facility began a home quarantine to monitor for rabies. Schwalbe requested the dog be quarantined at the shelter. She says she was told since the dog had no prior history of attacks, the dog would remain at home.
I was really angry. I think the dog...
Okay, I think just watching this first few minutes, it shows you so many aspects in which a veterinary behaviorist can be involved, right? This is a typical situation. There's nothing extreme in this situation. Dog aggression is one of the most frequent and most important public health problem when it comes to living with pets, right? And there is this perception that if you have a breed like a Rottweiler or a Pit Bull or some other big breed, whatever is popular in a country, usually gets the blame for aggression. But you see, in this case, it was a Chihuahua. And actually, if you look at studies that have been done also at Penn, Chihuahuas, they rank very high as in the aggression index. So it was a Chihuahua that bit a child in the face, causing an injury that then required medical intervention. And then it required also the application of the legislation with the United States. In the United States, is mostly local legislation, right? This dog was released again because the state legislation, it says that in some states, one bite is not enough to take the dog away from the owners. So you, as a veterinary behaviorist, will also be involved in this part, which is collaborating with the legislator to come out with a law that will protect citizens. These aspects are much more developed in Europe, where the legislation is much stronger and is usually at a national or European level. But this is a typical example. There are other examples. Fascinating. This is the aspect of my job that now fascinates me the most, the relationship between the body and behavior. And the more we move forward, the more we know that actually our behavior is not determined by us or just by our brain, as we like to think. Actually, the other creature, we are hosts, right, of many other creatures, which are usually bacteria, viruses. They do influence our behavior. Why? Because they influence our immune system. So how we behave, it doesn't just really depend from us. There are many examples. You have seen in these days a report just came that COVID-19 actually it affects some areas of the brain, causing decrease of gray matter, right? So, but there are other known examples, thanks to the rabies virus, thanks to toxoplasmosis. Toxoplasmosis, we would change the behavior of a host, the rodents, so it becomes less fearful of a cat, so it can be killed, and the toxoplasma can be transmitted. So this is something that we already know, and it affects the behavior of our pets too, the same way. So what do I do in my daily life, more in a more granular level? I treat dogs and cats with behavior problems. They are not just privately owned dogs and cats. So, for example, sometimes I consult with laboratories at the University of Pennsylvania because they have animals that are developing, I don't know, stereotypies. For example, this is very true for some lab animals, or anxious behavior. Or a laboratory animal is to be adopted after it has ended its research career. So it's both private owners, and sometimes it's also labs. I teach to my students animal behavior. I have to say, lately I've been involved a lot in teaching welfare too. And as Emily was mentioning, I'm teaching now in our master program. I like research. I focus my initial research for my PhD studying stress. Now I'm moving towards studying the link between physical and mental health. So, for example, right now we have a project running. It's about the inflammatory response, the immune response in cats, and how this influences behavior and cognition. These are a few of cases, for example, very extreme separation anxiety. We tend to see a lot of extreme cases. Why? Because our population of general practitioners here in Philadelphia is very good at treating behavior cases, simple behavior cases. And I think this is due to the fact that Penn was the first school in the world to have a behavior residency, a behavior program. So there is a long tradition at the University of Pennsylvania of teaching animal behavior. So this is a very extreme case of separation anxiety. Before moving to the United States, I thought that what you saw in the movie, that you like punch the wall and they will put a hole, was just in the movies, but it's actually true. A dog can like put a hole, destroy the wall, because most walls are dry walls. in Europe, most walls are bricks, so you cannot really, your dog cannot do this. Some other times they are different type of problems. So for example, here a dog that has a fear problem, an extreme fear problem, which also generates this compulsive behavior. But these are always very interesting cases because we think we always try to rule out a possible medical complaint. Right? Is this dog targeting a specific part of the body because there is some level of pain, discomfort, itchiness. Sometimes we do some very cool and innovative stuff. This is, of course, not our daily routine. But in this case, for example, it was a dog that was presented for licking and chewing his paw, his arm, his leg continuously. And then at some point, something started to grow. We saw that there was a tumor, a benign tumor, an hamartoma that was encapsulating, that was compressing the nerves, the ulnar radial nerve. And so this was creating this urge, this feeling of continuously licking these areas, even before it became evident that it was much more than just an ulcer, right? So that's a very, very cool case that we treated with well, medication, but also local regional block. So we were actually anesthetizing the area of the arm where there was this problem, so the dog could tolerate this discomfort. Also, I work on some translational things, translational or comparative things, meaning that they apply to human medicine too. So for example, this is a study that we did on a disease that affects dogs, but also affects humans. It's called mucopolysaccharidosis. They are lysosomal storage diseases, and humans are known to have behavior and cognitive changes. Very small animals like rodents, they are not good model. So in this case, we used the dog as a model for this. And well, I just love my job, and there are several reasons. Mostly it's because I can have contact with students. Just a couple of minutes to present you the master, because it's an online program, and so you might consider joining it also long distance. We started 3 years ago, I think, 3 or 4 years ago now, and it has been a successful program. It's about animal welfare and behavior, but what I think makes our program different is that, as you will see, is not just for veterinarians. Actually, we have students that come from, is in the spirit of what I was saying before, that your skills are really needed in the spirit of One Health, but also in private industry. So we have people that comes from very, very different industries that they want to learn about animal behavior and welfare. And what I learned teaching this course is that if you are a professional at a high level already, you have all the skills, the professional skills. Maybe you have to work a little bit harder because you need to know, to learn concepts of medicine that you don't have. But these people, they already have the skills to go through these things very quickly, much quicker, much faster than a young student would have. So this has been a wonderful discovery, working with these professionals from very different backgrounds. And it's a 2-year program. The certificate program is a 1-year program. Then if you want to get into the master, it's a 2-year program. But then you can have an extra 3rd year, mostly to complete your research project, but also if you want to take some other course, selective course. You can find information on our, if you just Google PenVet, animal behavior and welfare, animal welfare and behavior, this program will be the first thing that comes out. It has a relatively, compared to the rest of rate of acceptance of PEN, which is 9%, so only 9% of people that apply to the university, they get admitted. Our master has a relatively high rate, 27%. It means people that apply, they have 1/4 of possibilities to be admitted. We have, even if it's online, we have a lot of synchronous activity, a lot of stuff, either via Zoom or via platforms like Canvas that allow us to have discussions, a synchronous discussion, but continuously active discussion. We have several courses, animal welfare, animal ethics, animal behavior, which is my course, and then one less course in the certificate program to learn how to design our project, a research project, and then we transition you into the master program where you can pick your path. And we have several courses depending on the specialization that you want to have. My courses that I'm launching this summer, it was started in June actually, is applied animal behavior, small animal behavior for dog and cats, right? So if you are more interested in small animal behaviors, we are starting this course this summer. And yeah, that's all. If you want to contact Pen, here are a few, for this specific program, here are a few contacts that you might use. But again, if you Google Pen Vet, animal welfare and behavior, it will come. And that's all. I hope it was not too boring.
Definitely no. Thank you so much. It was really interesting learning a lot about your work, about UPenn, and especially about the fact that UPenn has the oldest animal behavior program in the world. That's a really fascinating one as well to hear about. And so thank you for the program that you talked about, the UPenn online certification program. Thank you. Emily helped us to put the link in the chat. So if you want to access the program, you can just check in the chat section. Emily already has put the link to that program in the chat section, so you can access it.
Oh, thank you. I see. Thank you, Emily.
Yep. So at this point, we'll just jump straight into the questions. And there are lots of questions, especially from those that have been sent in before the conference. And then we have 2 questions already here waiting for Dr. Carlo Siracusa. But let's probably just start up with Emily and ask some questions. So some of the questions that were asked earlier are quite linked. So I'll ask 2 questions that are linked together, Emily. So the first question is, how is successful domestication related to animal behavior? And then the next question, which is related to that as well, is how does animal behavior contribute to animal welfare?
Cool, thank you. Really good questions. And I'm sure Dr. Carlo can also, I'd love for you to also chime in because I think I would learn a lot from your answer too. So the domestication question I think is so interesting. And I think that the short answer is, I mean, domestication has obviously had an impact on animal behavior. I mean, you know, using dogs as an example, I mean, yes, there are some similarities between wolf behavior and dog behavior. There are also significant differences in their behavior, their social behavior, and that's, you know, because of domestication. And I think that, you know, even looking at, you know, there's been really interesting research on how dogs, you know, work with and respond to humans and how that differs from how wolves work with and respond to humans. And again, there's some really interesting similarities, but there's also some really striking differences. And so I think that when we are trying to we have to be very cautious about comparing dogs, for example, to wolves, or comparing, you know, domesticated animals to their wild counterparts. We need to be very careful in how we do that, because, you know, having these long relationships with humans, having us very often, you know, be very selective about how we breed these animals, it very much has an impact on their behavior. And I'm sorry, I'm not giving more specifics because I think it greatly depends on like the species and then even the breed, for example. I mean, even within dogs, we have, you know, all these different breeds that have very different kind of characteristics. So Before I move to the animal welfare question, I would love to hear if Dr. Carlo has thoughts on the domestication question.
Yeah, I actually always start my presentations on dog behavior, especially dog social behavior, with this type of concept, because you will hear medias especially, but on social media too, like, oh, there's a wolf in your little pug. And I'm like, really? Did you look at that thing? There's no wolf in there. Like, the wolf is long gone. Like, it's just forget about it. With domestication, we have created a new species. So they are just two different species. Some people will tell you, oh, that's not true. They can have babies together. Well, it depends. The concept of species is a construct of human. Nature is much more fluid, right? There are not necessarily these breaking points like we have in our theories. But definitely there are different animals. As you correctly, Emily, were saying, they actually behave differently around stimuli. So, for example, one of the most common implications is that, oh, a pack of dogs. This is wrong. The pack, from a scientific standpoint, is a very specific unit, which is usually a family, right? And then larger packs, they can have more families, but the basic is a family unit, like human society as a family unit as the base. Dogs don't form this type of societies. They are unrelated, usually also when they congregate around food. They don't raise puppies together. This is why puppies, they have a high chance to die, like dog puppies, if they are stray. They don't do cooperative hunting. They congregate around trash because they're scavengers and they eat all this trash together. Now, there is some research, like the research from Sarah Macciolini, that shows that in certain circumstances, dogs can form something similar to a pack. But this because dogs, the biggest thing that the domestication gives is plasticity, is the ability to adapt to an environment which is highly modified by humans. And so dogs have gained a lot of this plasticity, so they can live in a very busy downtown environment like New York City or London or Lagos or Rome, or they can live in the middle of nowhere. So this is what domestication has done to the species. But at the same time, has made the species highly dependent on humans, on us. So this is why they are constantly looking at us. It's the most fascinating aspect of training. You will see that most dogs are really trying to understand, what do you want from me? They're constantly looking at people, because we have made them highly dependent on us. And this is true for many other species. Look at pigs, right? Pigs are not wild boars. They are completely different species. They are kept in completely different situation. You still use the wild model to define sort of to understand what the typical behavior of the species might be. But a species like the dog is very, very far from this wild model. There's been some interesting research done mostly in East Europe and Russia that shows that just a few generations, they can cause very, very relevant changes, and usually morphological changes. They come with behavior changes. So, for example, in foxes, they've seen that having white spots, so pupil coloration, like having white or having floppy, like soft ears, it comes with general. These foxes are also tamer, more docile, right? So yeah, domestication greatly influences the behavior, but the biggest thing that does is causes the species to be dependent on humans. And what this means for us as professionals It means that it's our job. We are the one with the big brain to make sure that the species, they have a good quality of life. Because we twisted their behavior for our convenience, then it's our job now to make sure that they live in an environment that makes them feel good, or as better as they can, at least.
Yeah, I thank you for that. That's so helpful. I think that it is so interesting, you know, like how we so want to like believe that we're living with these little wolves. You know, like thinking about all of the, even like pet food commercials, right? Like it's a wolf bounding through the forest and then it turns into like a golden retriever or something, you know, like, so it's very interesting how we really want, so many of us want to believe this, but then also questioning, you know, how this belief impacts our behavior towards them and how we care for them. You know, if we think that these are these wild wolves that we need to tame still, even though they've been domesticated for thousands of years. So I think that that's really important to think about, and kind of going into, you know, the connections between behavior and welfare. That was the second part of the question. I mean, they're so interconnected. I mean, I love Dr. Carlo, your definition of welfare that you shared is so important. You know, how it's the quality of life from the perspective of the animal. And I think that, you know, behavior is how that animal is responding to their environment. At least that's kind of my shortened definition. And so, you know, they're obviously so interconnected. Their behavior is, you know, likely, you know, an effect of their welfare in many ways. And, you know, so I think it's kind of hard to tease apart really, like what's, you know, behavior, well, you know, like in terms of what's affecting what, because I think they're just so interconnected. But again, Carlo, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on like behavior and welfare.
Yeah, so I always make a parallel. I like to make a lot of examples with human reality, because I think we, human species, we understand our world, or at least better than other world. So I always make a parallel with understanding the language or the culture of different people, right? So I come from south of Italy, originally left many years ago, but where people, they have certain characteristics. So they are known for doing a lot of gestures, for example, talking with a very high tone of voice. So, and in this very densely populated city, sometimes, I don't know, two housewives, they can start yelling one at each other from the balcony. And if you look, you might think that they're having a fight, but it's because you don't know the language, right? So you cannot really interpret what is happening between them. And this happens, we make a lot of assumption when we see other people that speak a different language doing something. Things come in our brain like, oh, you know, maybe they're having a fight, or maybe, but even things, when I came here to the States, a friend of mine, she is originally from Italy, but now she lives in Spain. She's very physical. So the first thing that she did when she met my boss was she went and hugged her, very close, strong. She kissed her in the face. and my boss was like, oh, what's this? So understanding animal behavior is the same thing. If we don't understand the language, the rules of that society, how can we create an environment that is good for them, that is they perceive as good, right? So if I want to do something to make you happy, Emily, I say, Emily, what will make you happy? I don't assume that, oh, because, I don't know, because she lives in Virginia and then she has to like this, or all these stereotypes, right, that we tend to use a lot. We don't have to make the same mistake with our animals. We need to know the typical behavior, how the environment where they live would look like to make them happy. Yeah, so behavior is essential, fundamental for animal welfare, because it allows us to understand what's the animal version of an happy life, or that species version of a happy life.
Perfect. Thank you. That's very helpful.
I see there are many other questions. Dr. Sande, you want us to go?
Yes.
More
Yes,
questions?
so there are lots of questions waiting. But before we dive into those, there are two questions that I'll really love to have my mentor here, Melissa, to share her perspective on. So the two questions that would direct to Melissa here are, one says, what makes pets so submissive? And then the other one, which I think is quite related, says, how can one train his pets to suit his purpose?
So there are a lot of reasons for what they are terming submission. We have to think about a lot of different factors, such as breed-specific traits and individual-specific traits, and how the animals are raised, how their needs are met, how they are treated. There's so many different factors in literature that go on and on and on. Submission, I think we also have to be very clear about the context that we're speaking about submission. I think that's probably the most important factor. And, when we're looking at animal behavior, I feel like every individual dog needs to have a profile made the same way that any one of us would, to determine, what the factors are that bring the behavior about. The second question was,
how can one train his dog to suit his purpose?
For the human's purpose?
Yes, for the human's purpose.
Again, from my perspective, specializing in animal-assisted interventions and service dog training, I don't ask a dog to do a job unless they are equipped to do so and for them to enjoy it. It's really difficult. I'm going to just give a couple of quick examples that I think are better than a long conversation. If we have a really nice border collie that is, fantastic and friendly and not showing any kind of aggression, and the human that lives with that border collie says, I want to take this dog into my clinic to work with elderly people for animal-assisted therapy. Dog might be okay for that job, but when I'm looking at breed-specific traits, they need a lot of movement, they need a lot of jobs, and the majority that I've trained are ball crazy. Well, those crazy occupational therapists in all of those elder facilities put tennis balls on the bottoms of the walkers. So, if you take a ball crazy dog and put him in an environment where there's a whole lot of balls there, you've got some choices, and you're either going to try and get him to stop his passion, or you're going to end up with a lot of elderly folks, falling down, right? So again, there's just so much to be said for making sure that you have the right match, and making sure that everybody has a profile. And I keep talking about the profile because that's what I do in my work. When I'm training people and their dogs, I develop a profile of the human. What are their skills, their ability to follow through, their understanding of the situation. I create a job profile. Okay, what is it that you would like this dog to do? Whether it's a family dog or working in therapy, or, doing scent work for seizures. And then we do a profile of the dog, starting with the breed-specific traits, individual traits, the different environments. I one time had this lovely woman ask me to help her train her dog, self-train her dog to be a service dog. And, all of her requests were legitimate, helping to open doors and drawers and things like that. Well, I had been seeing her for, I think it was the 6th visit, and I finally went to her home, and she was a hoarder. And there was a pathway about this big throughout her house, and there was no possibility that this dog was going to be able to do its job because of the environment. So, you know, when we're talking about, I want to train a dog to do, you know, very specific work, you know, whatever it is I want to do, there's a lot of considerations. I think you have to create the profile and then determine if those factors are going to work together or not. It's a lot like the dating apps. You know, you answer a bunch of questions and you've got to make sure that it kind of fits. And, you know, when you have a good fit, then you have a good fit for that job. But asking a dog to work outside of its skill set and its ability to learn, whether it's, you know, physical, cognitive, or psychosocial within a dog, I think all of those things matter, as well as with the human.
Thank you very much. So like one thing I hear you saying is the fact that that the dog needs to, we need to first of all know what the dog is loves and all of that, and then now match it to what the person wants. Not that the person gets to, let me use the language, not that the person gets to mold the dog forcefully into matching the human.
True. We don't want any force. Yeah. It's really making a match. And, you know, even within that job description, saying, okay, these are my must-haves versus, wow, these would be really nice, but I can see that my dog is not equipped to do this kind of work. So you've got to figure out what can you let go and what are you married to. And sometimes I think people make a mistake getting a puppy that they think is so cute, and I'm going to train this dog to whatever, and they don't take into consideration what that dog's genetics make it more suitable for, you know, like the border collie, you know, versus a King Charles Spaniel who is really a lap dog. Which one of those two is going to be the best fit? And then, you know, looking at litters of animals, you know, it's really difficult to try and figure out which one is going to be, you know, one that is a little more slow going, a little more snuggly versus, you know, the one that is a workhorse and wants to be doing a job all day long. It can be really, really difficult to tell, but you can't force a dog into doing a job.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have a lot of questions waiting, so I'll probably just rush through to see how we could get the questions sorted. So Dr. Carlo Siracusa, there are a number of questions that are directed to you. So let me ask some of those so you can. So the first one says, just curious, how do animal consultants normally work with veterinarians if the veterinarians have very little knowledge in behavioral medicine / medication? I think you talked a bit about this sometime during your presentation, but would probably just love to hear you give perspective to this.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm allowed, I would like to say something about the submission concept, which is something that it fascinates me a lot. Animals are submissive because aggression, even though documentaries or TV or shows want you believe the opposite because it's good TV, aggression is biologically not the first option. That is, if you are an aggressive animal, you risk to be injured and to die in nature. So it's not true, this idea that animals tend to be very aggressive and that aggression equals dominance or a hierarchical status is a myth. It's not, and it's a wrong biological concept. So submission helps animals and humans too to save our precious life and skin. Anyway, so how do trainers, certified behaviorists get along with veterinarians and work with veterinarians? I think that first of all, the situation varies a lot from area to area. most vet schools in America now, or many vet schools in America now, they have at least a small animal behavior program or behavior classes. So a lot of a new generation of veterinarians, they are getting trained in this. So they will feel comfortable at least to approach the basic cases. Then if the general practitioners that you like the most as a consultant, behavior consultant, does not have a deep knowledge, then I was just to consult, even on the phone, like it's legal, while we cannot consult as veterinary behaviorists on the phone with clients, because we need something that's called a BCPR, veterinary client-patient relationship. We can consult with other vets. So other veterinarians can pick up the phone and call us or the other behavior services that are around the country and saying, I'm seeing these cases, I'm working with a certified behaviorist, and this is the case. With all this, what do you think, right? Most veterinarians will, veterinary behaviorists will be happy to help. We also have a service, actually, a telemedicine, teleconsulting service, which is called PenVet Behavior App, that allows the veterinarians to consult with us and to involve the owner in the conversation. But Emily, I don't know, you probably had this experience many times. So what do you think?
So I very often have clients who contact me to work together, and if generally speaking, depending on the behavior, I mean, of course, I always recommend that they have a relationship with a veterinarian, and that the animal has had an exam within the
I think Emily's frozen out.
Oh, okay, I was not sure if it was my connection that froze. Yeah. Well, if you want, we can move forward with the next question, and then we can come back.
All right, then. So we'll jump to some of the other questions. So Dr. Carlo, someone was still asking about the program you talked about, the PenVet program, and says, can registered or licensed vet techs take the behavioral program?
Absolutely. We actually have some of our students are vet techs. Yeah, more than one, definitely. So we in every class we have at least, I would say, a couple, 2 to 3 vet techs.
Okay, fantastic.
I am back. I'm so sorry.
Awesome.
I can't turn on my video because I'm not a host anymore.
Okay,
I think my power
I'll
went
take
out.
care of that. We need to just get you back on the panelist board.
Yep, so you are co-host again, yes.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I had to join from my phone because my power went out for some reason. So, but anyways, I just, to answer quickly, basically, I always make sure that people have a current relationship with their veterinarian. And depending on the behavior issue, you know, I'll definitely push that they make an appointment with their veterinarian. Like if it's a sudden change in behavior, you know, if they suddenly start displaying, for example, if they're an adult dog who suddenly starts having house training issues, I say we need to get your animal in for an appointment with your vet. And I don't diagnose anything, you know, I don't say, oh, your dog has a UTI and so you need to go, you know, it's always like, there might be something going on here. You need to talk to your vet. And then for behavior issues specifically, like for example, if a dog has separation anxiety or is showing a lot of, you know, generalized anxiety, I, as soon as possible when working together, if I get the sense that the veterinarian that they're working with, or if the veterinarian tells me that they're not super comfortable with, you know, working with behavior meds, then I highly recommend that the veterinarian calls up a veterinary behaviorist and does a phone-to-phone consult, or I will refer the client directly to a veterinary behaviorist. if there's one in the area. Luckily, where I am in Virginia, we have a really great veterinary behaviorist not far from me. But yeah, so it's always about, bringing those people on the team and working together to help that animal. Hopefully that helps answer the question.
Yep, it does. Thank you so much. So we'll be rushing through some of the other questions. So Dr. Carlo Siracusa, someone asks, how many years of GP experiences in general is needed to apply for the residency program in the US? The same person also asked, a minimum 1-year internship. It says it says a minimum 1-year internship or GP experience is the prerequisite for a behavioral residency training in the US. Would you recommend doing a 1-year rotating internship or a 1-year GP before applying for the residency program? And then what will make the applicant more competitive? Is it a very big difference?
So you're right, the minimum requirement is 1 year of practice. As I was saying, the standard is considered 1 year of a rotating internship. So if you do general practice, then it has to be equivalent in terms of experience that you gathered. That is, if you work in a very small clinic, and for example, you only see a lot of dogs and cats for health checks and vaccines, then 1 year would not be enough, and probably you also need to acquire experience somewhere else. If you work in a large practice with many veterinarians and you do a lot of more complex medicine cases or surgery cases or neurology and derm, and then if you are exposed to a variety of cases, then this is probably better. What makes the application more solid, more competitive? Definitely, the more year, the better it is. And also, it depends. If the place where you're doing your 1 year rotation is a very good reputation, an excellent reputation for being a center where they have a high caseload, very complex case, then probably your 1 year rotation would definitely be enough. If it's a place that is known, for example, for not seeing a lot of complex cases, this might play to your disadvantage. But it's not. There's not necessarily a clear cut. I always encourage. I do love general practice personally. So doing a 1 year rotating internship and general practice for me is the plus, because in general practice you get a lot of interaction with clients. So the things that I was discussing before, the communication skills, are well tested. While in the 1 year rotation, you don't have the time to acquire the skills. So for me personally, it would be 1 year rotating internship plus a year in general practice. But then it depends. Like if you have the minimum requirements and you think you have a good experience, I would encourage you to apply anyway, and then get an assessment from the person who does the selection, and what and if you need something more.
Okay, thank you very much. So someone asked, how can animal behavior influence that of humans? Emily, can you?
So sorry, hold on. I'm having a hard time hearing for some reason all of a sudden. Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so the question says, how can animal behavior influence that of humans?
Oh, yeah, good question. I mean, I think it can influence us in so many ways, right? They're the other animals that are in our environment. They're part of the environment that is also, what we are responding to. And I think if we're talking specifically about companion animals, we of course are impacted by their behavior. We can experience a whole range of emotions in regards to how our animals are responding. So if they are obviously displaying behaviors that we find undesirable, like if they're, for example, barking, or like if we're taking them for a walk and they're lunging on leash, those things, of course, can make us feel all kinds of emotions, frustration or anger or whatever. But they also can make us feel so many other wonderful emotions. Like, Carlo was talking about how we often, love our animals and we have these relationships with them, and we, so when they're feeling good, when they are, feeling playful, or, when they, are wanting that social interaction with us, it can make us feel really good too, and it can, calm us. It can make us feel, there's been so much research on some of the different effects of, our relationships with other animals on our own health, physical and mental health. But I think that, we also just have to, at least for me, I feel like I'm always having to refocus myself on the perspective of the animal, which I'm so glad Dr. Carlo brought up, because I think it's easy for me to think about how the animal affects me, but I think that it's, we're all here to help the other animals, and so yes, of course, how the animal is affecting me or is affecting the human client, is very, very important, but we also need to continue to shift our perspective to how is that animal, perceiving their environment. How is their behavior being impacted by our behavior? Because I think that that isn't the focus enough of like how that animal is being impacted by the human, instead of always thinking about how is it the human is being impacted by the other animal. I hope that helps. It's kind of a general question, so it's hard to know exactly where to go with it, but.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, it did. It did definitely. So if there are 3 other questions that are here right now on the screen, so I'll just run through. So Emily, let me probably ask you and Dr. Carlo this. Are there scholarship programs that sponsor studies in animal behavior? So maybe anyone you know about? Are there scholarship programs? Okay, say, are there scholarship programs that sponsor studies in animal behavior?
I do know that in terms of like graduate programs, I'm sure there's of course going to be there's scholarship opportunities, in different organizations for like, a program at a university. But I do know there are like the Karen Pryor Academy, which is a dog training program, the Academy for Dog Trainers. They both have scholarships available. The Academy for Dog Trainers has a scholarship program for people who work in like shelters and rescues, and also a program for people of color. And then Karen Pryor Academy also has a scholarship program for people of color to try to, provide access to, their programs. And then the International Association for Animal Behavior Consultants, they also have a diversity, equity, and inclusion program that includes scholarships for people of color. And they also have some really other great resources available as well. And I mentioned that because I know we also in the questions that people had asked when they registered, we had specific questions about what organizations are also attending to human rights and are kind of operating with diversity and inclusion in mind. And so I had already kind of prepared and wanted to share the programs that I'm aware of. But as far as like graduate scholarships or scholarships to other types of programs, I'm not really sure. Oh, actually the Pet Professional Guild also has, they do a scholarship program as well. Like you apply and then you have the choice of picking what program from their list that you can attend. I actually did that and I got their scholarship to the Academy for Dog Trainers. So it works and it's great. They paid for all of it. It was awesome. So that's the Pet Professional Guild.
I can add a little bit more on the academic programs. Masters, they do qualify for federal aid. So it's not a scholarship, you have to return the money, but it does qualify. A certificate program will not qualify because you need to have a certain minimum number of credits. Also, I would make a difference like among countries. Education in the United States is very expensive. But for example, in Europe, you can do a PhD program, or in Italy, for example, there are what are called specialization schools, scuole di specializzazione, and they are actually state funded. So, but you have to get in. It's masters with a very good reputation, like the master in Barcelona, the Autonomous University in Barcelona that I took. You have to speak Spanish, though. The classes, I think they are given in English. It's way less expensive than what a program here in the United States would be. The University of Lincoln in the UK is a very, very, very reputable program. And again, I think it's less expensive. Well, in the UK, they already start to be as close to what they cost in the United States. But there are a lot of state-funded. The European government invests a lot of money in animal welfare, a lot of money. So a lot of programs are funded. Where I was working before moving to the United States, the Istituto Zooprofilattico in Central, well, it's a national, it's Italy National Institute for Veterinary Public Health. And it has some offices that are centers of the World Health Organization for Animal Health, the OIE, and they were offering plenty of education for veterinarians that was free. And it was online and very, very good level, very good quality. So yeah, it depends. It's country dependent. Here in the United States, there's federal aid or some other scholarships. I know that some associations like Feel Free, Marty Baker, is thinking to create a scholarship program. It's really, 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 it wants to support animal behavior. And remember another thing, if you do veterinary behavior, you are working, you are earning your money, and you are paying for your education, but at the same time, you are working. So it's part of your work, let's say, but then you have to pay for courses or other stuff, which can be expensive.
Okay, thank you very much. I can see that Andrea Gordon is raising a hand. I don't know if you have a question. Could you please just type if you do have a question, and then so we'll have it, or if you have any other thing could you just probably type in the chat or in the Q&A. And so let me probably, we're almost, in fact, we already are late, so just run through a few questions briefly and probably just brief answers so that we can now round up the event. Someone is asking, how can one raise awareness for animal welfare in an unequal society such as is the case in South Africa, where poor people make up a significant population without appearing insensitive?
I can take the question if you want.
Okay.
There is a very, very interesting study that was published in the journal Animal Welfare that says that to educate people on animal welfare, you have to reach, you have to align with the values of people that you are predicating this welfare concepts. When I started my career as a scientist, as a veterinarian, I had a big, strong belief in the power of science, and meaning that I had this strong belief that if you explain something, a scientific concept to someone in a simple way, they will understand. Experience, but not just a professional experience, also life experience, what is happening today in the world, for example, and I'm not just referring to the invasion of Ukraine, but I'm also referring to the political conflicts, everything. It speaks volume to the fact that to connect with people, you need to reach to their values. You need to understand their values. And this is true for animal welfare too. That is, what is important in this society, right? What is how animal welfare would align to the values of that society. And there might not necessarily be, you are not necessarily going to reach what you want, but you might reach a compromise in saying, look, actually, a very good example is how do you convince someone that works in animal production to work with welfare, because they will tell you the same thing. I don't care. I need more eggs. I need more meat. But in a society like the United States, where it's a consumer society, so it's everything. Who dictates what happens here is the consumer. Is a European society is very different. The legislation comes from above, and people and government do adapt. Here it doesn't exist. Like if people don't want something, it's just not going to happen. So this is what you then do, right? Consumers now, they are more aware of animal welfare. They want it. And so you have to tell to the producer, it will reduce your veterinary expenses because your animal will be less sick. And so your veterinary bill will be lower. But also you will get to sell to all foods, for example, which where if you want to buy a piece of meat, it's going to cost you $9 or $10, or probably more now. So and your profit increase. So you really have to speak to people in their own language, and what is important to them, you have to align it with animal welfare. Legislation about, for example, ants and egg production, it has been created in the same way, because now there is a demand for it, and a very, again, like for free. I like really the company because it's a good example of private business enterprise and animal welfare, promoting noble concepts. So how do you convince a vet to get free certified? You create a pressure from the audience, from the population. How do you create a pressure from the population? You create a page, which is for free Happy Homes, which I love and I do recommend a lot, to educate people about for free. And then they are going to the vet and saying, oh, by the way, are you for free, right? So this is how you do it. I'm not really an expert on what the needs in different countries like Africa, for example, but it has to follow the same pattern. Just going there and as a professor telling to people, oh, you should do this because the science says so, it's not going to bring you anywhere. It really needs to reach to people values. And the programs that I was saying before, the OIE, the educational programs that were done, created in Italy, but then they went international, they kept also this in mind. Actually, when I was at the OIE, we had different delegations from Africa that were visiting for animal welfare. So this is what I think. It's going to values, and business companies, they're doing the same. The biggest behavior research group at Penn is not in the medicine school, Is not in the veterinary school, is in the business school, Wharton School, like super famous, the school of the entire Trump family. They are studying how to convince consumer to do certain things. So they are trying to get at people values to convince them to do certain things. So it's about this. It's about reaching to people values.
I just wanted to, can I just speak to that too?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, like, I completely agree. I think that going into, you know, like an impoverished community and telling them, like, this is what you need to do, is not, it's going to be met with resistance. People are going to feel like you don't understand them. And so we have to, as professionals, put in the work to immerse ourselves in that community and get to know who they are, what are their what are their values, what are their lives like. Because I think, you know, we can advocate for animal welfare all day, and trust me, I am all about advocating for animal welfare. You know, for example, I'm vegan, but like, I'm not going to go into an impoverished community and say you need to all become vegan. Like, I need to go in and understand, what is your daily life like? What are your, you know, how could that even be feasible in this community? You know, and it might not be. And so, you know, we have to kind of work together with that community to come up with a solution that works for them and works for the animals that we are trying to help as well, as best as we possibly can. I think it has to start with the community. They have to guide us as the professionals as to what is going to work for them, and also be you know, lead with empathy and recognize that, you know, people are doing the best that they can with the resources that they have available to them. And when we pause and let them tell us their stories, they're much more likely to be open to hearing our perspectives. So at least that's what I've learned through a lot of trial and error. You know, it's completely agree with you, Carlo, like going in somewhere and saying, this is operant conditioning, and because this is how it works, you know, or like, you know, sorry, like, yeah, it just doesn't work.
100% agree.
Yep. So thank you very much for all of the questions. I'm sorry for all that you've said, for giving perspective to everything that has been said as well, to all the answers. Andrea Gordon says, do you agree the way in which, okay, so maybe just very briefly, if we can just probably just very briefly give context to this, says, do you agree the way in which owners now view their pets has had positive impact on the way animals are treated in terms of training? There would appear to be more awareness here in the UK about negative impact of aversive methods. However, there are still old school trainers out there. I am seeing a lady this week who previously saw a trainer who used a sleep lead to teach lead walking, which she wasn't happy with, understandably. So, Emily, as a trainer, could you probably just briefly just give context to this?
So hopefully I'm understanding. So is the question that, or is it more like a statement that there's disagreement amongst like different, or disagreement around what training methods are best? Is that kind of what the sentence? Sorry, I was trying to listen and follow along.
Yeah, so I think the main question is in the very first statement, which says, do you agree the way in which owners now view their pets has had a positive impact on the way animals are treated in terms of training?
I mean, I think how people view their pets is still very inconsistent. You know, like we have, I mean, there's a huge spectrum, right? Like, I mean, even just like, for example, I am someone who is very I'm a very passionate animal advocate. I obviously am very passionate about using reward-based, fear-free training. My dogs and my cat have access to all of this enrichment, and we do all of these amazing things. Like they are my family. And then literally across the road from me, I have a neighbor who their dog lives outside, and that's how they spend their life. And so it's, there's so many differences in how we perceive our relationships with our animals. And I do feel like, at least even in the past 10 years, there's this huge shift towards viewing animals more as, these as family members, as kind of our children, and I do see a shift towards using, more reward-based, force-free, fear-free training methods. We still have a long way to go, and there's certainly a lot of variability in that. But I think I am seeing the shift happen, and which is very exciting. And I totally agree that that is where the industry needs to go. And I hope Dr. Carlo can speak to this as well, but at least the research I've been reading is telling us that, using shock collars and prong collars and aversive training methods does not provide positive animal welfare. There's too many risks associated with the possibility of causing additional fear, anxiety, or stress. It doesn't do us any favors in regards to their relationships with humans. And so I think that hopefully we can continue to shift and move in that direction of using methods that don't work by causing discomfort or causing fear, because unfortunately that is how a lot of them work. Even if we don't if we're talking about animal welfare from the perspective of the animal, I can say all day that shock collars don't really hurt the dog, but if they're changing their behavior in order to avoid being shocked, then that tells me that it's probably not comfortable. And so, is there a way that I can train this dog to do the same thing, but instead train them so that they're trying to behave in a way that gets them more of what I have to offer them, which is, like food or treats or, like toys. That's to me what I feel like is the shift that needs to happen. How can we teach people that we don't need to cause discomfort to our pets or other animals in order to change their behavior. And so, but I also want to recognize that, again, I truly want to believe that people are doing the best that they can with the resources and information that they have available to them. And there is so much misinformation out there. So we still have a long way to go, and we have to keep leading with empathy. I am someone who I call myself a humane trainer. I'm going to treat people humanely as well in those conversations. So, speaking to the person who was using the slip lead to train, walking on leash, I personally wouldn't do that. And I question whether or not that is the best method for that dog's welfare. And so I would approach that situation with empathy and say, why do you feel like this is the best method for training this dog to do this behavior? And we start there in a conversation, so I can understand that person's perspective and story, and then maybe they'll be open to hearing mine.
Okay, thank you very much. While you were talking, I wanted to probably add what you have on your shirt as one of the things that we probably should take note of. Always bring treats.
Yeah.
So thank you. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I always try to. I might as well take advantage of being on screen by wearing shirts, so I have a message that kind of is in line with what I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you all for being here, for taking out the time to come share with us, to learn, to educate ourselves and everything. At this point, I'll probably just hand over to one of my mentors as well, Dr. Elizabeth Ormerod. She's the Deputy Vice President, for IAHIO, and also the board chair for SCAS, Society for Companion Animal Studies. So probably just give some input as well to the whole animal welfare topic, and then also just give some closing remarks.
Well, what another conference, another wonderful One Health, One Welfare conference, Sunday. Well done. Congratulations on some fascinating presentations. I was in veterinary practice for 40 years and saw the difference that it made to have an understanding of the human-animal bond and companion animal behaviour. And these subjects, they should be taught more extensively in all veterinary schools. Assessing a client's human-animal bond and assessing the animal's behaviour should be something that we do during every veterinary consult. And it's really important that we pick on behaviour issues early and address them before people get to the point where they think they need to give up, relinquish the dog. And we should tell our clients at their very first visit to the practice that we have an interest in companion animal behaviour. And most of our work should be preventive. We should also build strong collaborative work with people who work in animal behaviour in our communities. And in that way, we could make these relationships much more sustainable, reduce the number of animals that are relinquished to shelters, also improve the animal welfare of the animals within the family. The other thing I would like to share is that in my first role in veterinary practice, I was in charge of an inner city charity clinic in Glasgow, and the level of understanding of my clients about animal care and welfare was very poor. So I started working with the clients one-on-one, and they responded. And the way that I did it was to do it through a comparative approach, explain what the pets needed compared to what the children need. So the pets need vaccinated against this, just like the children need vaccinated against this. We talked about diet, we talked about safety, and we actually had a big impact on improving childcare and welfare as well, because a lot of the children had not been vaccinated. And a lot of the children were being fed on a diet that wasn't appropriate. And the parents, they didn't find us patronising at all, because we used the animal as an example, and then we just slipped in about kids. And then some of the parents would let us know that they hadn't been doing what the nurse or the doctor would recommend. When I then had my own practice for a period of 28 years, I went into local schools so that I could teach the children and reach many more people at once. So instead of speaking to somebody one-on-one, I could go into a classroom and speak to 30-odd children, go into the school assembly and speak to 600 children. And I was welcomed into all of the local schools, started in the primary schools, doing workshops with the children to learn what they knew, what they didn't know, and then worked on the issues that they didn't understand. Then I was invited to work with the kindergarten, so I adapted the lessons for them, then the senior schools, then with the probation service, and then in the high security prisons. And all of these people were really interested to know about animal care and nutrition and preventive medicine. And I think this is something that all veterinary practices could do for their local communities. And it also is a benefit to the practice because it builds your relationship and trust with the local community. They saw us as a resource rather than as a money-making enterprise. And we learned a lot in the process. Animal care improved, and it made the practice successful because our turnover improved exponentially because people came to the practice because they realised that we really cared about them and their companion animals. So that's my advice. Veterinary practices, engage with your local community, get out there, do outreach. Don't wait for all the problems just to come into the practice. Get out there and stop a lot of issues from happening.
Thank you so much, Liz, for those wise words, especially to the veterinarians who are here, to more or less engage a lot more with the community and share about your knowledge, share about everything that you know, share about even the animal behavior, everything that you know, basically, in trying to help the environment and helping the community, and that way it helps the practice overall. So thank you all, thank you all, thank you. We cannot thank you enough for taking out the time to be here so far and to be here till this point of this event. We are so grateful for that you could take out the time to be here and that you are a part of, I would say, a part of our own community. So like, just like Dr. Elizabeth Ormerod just said, the outreach and everything, that's what we are doing here as well. Bringing people together and then getting to share knowledge, and we are all of us learning, and especially the fact that animal behavior is something that is peculiar to all of us. So yes, as a veterinarian, for example, and as veterinarians, we may have just a little bit of, do I say, a duty to animal behavior, to understanding it even beyond the regular person. But at the end of the day, that's why, for example, we chose Dr. Carlo, Siracusa, and Emily to let us know that even if you are not a veterinarian, you still do owe it as a duty to understand the behavior of the animals you have around you, especially if you are a pet enthusiast, if you are a pet parent, or if you are in a field that you probably may need to engage more with animals. And also because one of the main things that we as an organization, Dogalov, that we are passionate about is pioneering or helping to give grounds to animal-assisted interventions and the whole work of the human-animal bonds in Africa. So it's as good as saying that as this grows in Africa, as this grows in Nigeria, we also need to understand animal behavior. It is so critical. So thank you all for being here. I'll probably just want to finally say that we would love to have you engage with us on Facebook, on our social media channels. So on Facebook and on Instagram, we are at Pet Dogalov, or that's facebook.com/petdogalov, or Instagram, you can just check at Pet Dogalov. On LinkedIn, you can find us by just typing Dogalov. Dogalov is D-O-G-A-L-O-V. There's no E at the end. And we also have a community on Facebook where we get to share, where we can continue all of these conversations. We call it the Human Animal Community of Practice. So you can search for the Human Animal Community of Practice on Facebook and apply to be a member, and then would definitely take you in, and then we can continue these conversations there as well. So for all those who had questions that we were not able to answer, we will probably have the questions directed to the speakers, and then we'll send the answers directly. So thank you all so much for being here. It's really been fun having you. Thank you very much to all the panelists. Thank you to the team members of Dogalov. Thank you to Dr. Dauda, who is always there for us to help with all the technical things that we need in the background and all of that. Thank you all. And at this point, I'll say this is the end. We've come to the end of this meeting. Thank you so very much. And we'll see you again. We have another conference coming up in August. So we will send out the emails and everything when that is fully set to invite you as well. And we hope to see you during the August conference as well. So thank you so much. We've come to the end of this event, and we'll say bye-bye at this point. Dr. Dauda, you want to say something?
Bye.
Yeah, just wanted to ask about the August event. Please bring 5 of your friends, like everyone. Take as many as possible. Don't worry, we have the room for all of you. So let each person here now bring at least 5 friends when you come in August. We'll be happy to host you. And thank you, Emily. Thank you, Dr. Carlo. You know, it was just too much. I was telling Dr. Sunday, like, we should have invited you guys individually because each of you have too much of stuff for us, and we're not prepared for something this much. So thank you, really appreciate it. And yeah, we hope to have you in August. Please block your calendar. You can block all of August for now. When we tell you to pay the time, then you pick it up. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So bye-bye, everyone.